Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
I'm ready to go to Cloggin.
You're going to go to Cloggin?
No, I'm doing clogging. What he's saying is we have our rehearsal and recital.
Yep. All right.
Send you back up, please. I'm getting
That's
your song.
That's
All
the
right,
song I danced to.
Okay. What do you want to say?
Bye.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Good job. Can you tell them see you next week?
I'll see you in the booty next week. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Say bye.
Bye.
All right, watch where you're going. Don't trip over the cord. All right. As Elizabeth and Austin were saying, recital was this weekend. So we've had a pretty busy weekend. So that's what they were talking about. This week, we're going to finish up Peter. We're going to finish up the cast of the cross. And we're going to talk about some things that Jesus did for Peter that Jesus also does for us today. And we talked about last week how Peter was supposed to be one of Jesus' closest friends in his inner circle. And then when it came time for Peter to really be there for Jesus, he bailed. He wasn't there. And how many times are we that person? How many times are we Peter? When we have someone who really needs us and we bail on them. How many times are we like that in the church? We see somebody hurting or someone's facing a tremendous hardship and we say, oh, well, we've been there, we've done that. I did my part, I did my time, I've done all that. They'll figure it out. They'll be okay. And we don't try to help. So I would assume we are more oftentimes than not a Peter than we should be. But there are some things that Jesus did for Peter. And that's what we're going to talk about. And the first thing that Jesus did is Jesus forgives us. He forgave Peter. Peter had 7 sins. The first sin that Peter had was the sin of doubt. And we see that in Matthew 14:28 through 31. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? When Peter started to become afraid, he began to sink. He had doubt. How many times do we have the sin of doubt? We are told to do something, and we say, it's not going to work. That's never going to work. How often are we Peter in the sin of doubt? The second thing is Peter's sin was the sin of selfish pride. And we see this in Matthew 16:21 to 23. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. So again, Peter, sin of selfish pride. What did Peter not want? He didn't want Jesus to die. Verse 22, Peter took Jesus aside, saying, Far be it from you. This shall never happen to you. He didn't want to let go. When do we see this the most? In the same situation that Peter's in with Jesus. When we're about ready to lose a loved one. When we're about ready to lose, to me, because my mind is parents, because that's who I've lost, who I remember losing. The time is coming. The time is here. You have been told you're down to the last few hours. It's coming. Selfishness hits, doesn't it? We don't want them to go. We want them to stay. We are Peter. We are Peter. We got to be careful. The sin of selfish pride. We know Jesus had to do this. We know Jesus had to go through with this for the greater good, for what comes after. Just like we know that as much as we want our loved one to stay, most of the, well, I would say all the time, but most of the time, they're going to be better off. If they've lived the Christian life and we know where they're going to go, then we're selfish to keep them here. You all know what I'm talking about. You know where I'm going. So the selfish pride. There's also the selfish pride, not even of death, but I think of the workplace. I'm going to do what I can and climb over whoever I want to climb over and abuse whoever I want to abuse to get up the ladder, to be the top, to be the best, to get where I want to go. I don't care how many relationships I ruin or how many people I trample over to get there and how I ruin my name to get there, but I'm going to get there. So there's different selfish pride sins, but those are the two I could think of. The third sin Peter had is the sin of foolish rage. And we see that in John 18:10 and 11. It says, Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me? How did Peter sin? Foolish rage. What did he do? He got mad. He cut off the ear of Malchus. Now, I would say when we get mad, we don't go cut people and cut body parts off people. But what do we do in our fits of rage? And it's if you caught that, it's foolish rage. Because what happens when we're in that moment? Most of the time we act a fool. Most of the time we're not thinking right. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. And it's a sin. The sin of foolish rage. The fourth sin that Peter had is the sin of denying Christ. And we see that in Luke 22:54 through 62. It says, Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. And Peter was following at a distance. And when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them. Then a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, said, This man also was with him. But he denied it, saying, Woman, I do not know him. And a little later, someone else saw him and said, You are also one of them. But Peter said, Man, I am not. And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, Certainly this man also was with him, for he too is a Galilean. But Peter said, Man, I do not know what you are talking about. And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, Before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and he wept bitterly. You know that light bulb moment we've been talking about for 13, 14, 15 weeks now? This was Peter's light bulb moment. The rooster crowed and click, there goes the light. He told me I was going to deny him. I did deny him. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And what did Peter do? He ran out and he wept bitterly. So this sin of denying Christ was actually sin 4, 5, and 6 because he did it 3 times. So this also proves the point where, we ask to be forgiven of sins. Peter made the same sin, repeated it 3 times. We're still able to ask for forgiveness 3 times. Now, we're supposed to change, work on change, and we can't just keep repeatedly doing it and saying, okay, ask for forgiveness, I'm good to go. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying just because you sin once doesn't mean that if it's a sin you're really, really struggling with, if you happen to really work at it and tried it, but you just happen to do that sin again, I still, personally, Paula opinion, you can ask for forgiveness. Now, if I go and I steal a car and I get caught and I do my jail time or whatever and I get out of jail and the very next week I go out and steal a car again and I repeat that pattern and I never try to change, no. My opinion is we don't get forgiven of that until we completely change. Until I steal that last car and make my mindset that I'm never going to do it again. Okay? And that's like Peter. But Peter he denied Jesus 3 times. How many times, and this hits home to me, how many times do we deny Christ? In a week? In a month? In a year? I go back thinking of my school days, not so much as an adult now, I guess, because hopefully I'm wiser, but in school days, it's that shame if you're not in the in crowd, or if you don't go to the biggest church, or you don't belong to a certain church, or you don't believe a certain thing. It's a whole lot easier to say, oh yeah, I believe that too, instead of really saying, well, hey, this is what the Bible says, or this is what I should do. Again, to me, that's denying Christ. Not verbally saying, hey, I don't know this man, I don't believe in God. I think there's different ways of denying Christ. But anyway, Peter did this 3 times, 3 big sins. I would say as humans, we have denied Christ at some point in our life. At least one time, we have probably denied him in some way. The 7th sin that Peter did was the sin of partiality. And we see that in Galatians 2:11 through 13. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. So our sin of partiality, we weren't treating everybody equal. Why? Peter was refusing to associate with the Gentiles. We got to be careful. Do we fall in that sin of partiality? They're not in our clique. They're not in our group. They don't live the way I live, meaning the means, not doing other things, doing worldly things. Be careful of partiality. Be careful of they're not the right color. They don't believe the same thing as me. They don't wear the same type of clothes that I do. They don't hang around the same people I do, so they have to be bad. Be careful of partiality. The next thing Jesus did with Peter was he transformed him, and he can transform us as well. The first thing is Jesus issued a warning to Peter. Luke 22:31 through 34. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. Peter said to him, Lord, I am ready to go with you, both to prison and to death. Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me. So he issues a warning. He issues a warning to us too, don't he? If we read the Bible, we have a warning of what's going to happen if we don't do what we're supposed to do. We know the end result. The second thing, he made sure Peter knew he could see him. Luke 22:61 and 62. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. What happened here? Jesus made sure Peter knew, I'm going to see you. I'm going to see you. And what happened? When he did this, Jesus could see him as Peter runs off and is weeping. The third thing is very similar to what we just said, but Jesus made sure Peter could see him. Luke 24:34. I had that backwards. Sorry, I'm reversing these points. Luke, the second one we just said, Peter wanted to make sure that Jesus could see him. It was Peter wanting to be seen, not Jesus. Third point, Jesus wanted to make sure that Jesus could see him. And that's Luke 24:34. The Lord has risen indeed and has appeared to Simon. Again, Jesus wanted to appear to Peter. Remember, changed his name to Simon. Wanted to appear to Peter to make sure that Peter knew that Jesus said, hey, I can see you. The next thing, Jesus confronted Peter, but he did it gently. And this is a very, very, very important point. We are called to confront, we are called to correct, but we are called to do it gently, not harshly, angrily. We see it in John 21, verses 15 through 17. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to them, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Okay? He is confronting Peter. He's asking, he knows what Peter is about to do. He's confronting him. Do you really love me? And it's like I repeat to my kids, are you getting it? If you keep repeating it, obviously there's something you're not getting. That's what Jesus is saying here. Do you really love me? The last thing, sin separated Peter from Jesus. How are we like Peter? Sin will separate us from Jesus today. our sin separates us. Jesus does the same things to us as he does to Peter. He issues the warnings. He makes sure we know he can see us. He left us knowing he was resurrected, thus giving us hope that we can make it to him again one day. He confronts us, but does it gently. How does he do all that? He issues warnings through the Bible. We know through the Bible where we're going to go, how we're going to get there, and what we got to do to get there. And he tells us how to do it. Some things are harsh in the Bible. Some are straight down. No leeway, no give or take. But he does it gently. And all of that reminds me, I guess because it's my daily life, of a parent. What does a parent do? I issue warnings. When do I issue warnings? Because before I give a spanking, before I take something away, before somebody gets in trouble, they get a warning. I make sure they know I can see what they're doing. I saw what they done and where it's going to be corrected. But I also let them know how to change it, not to do it again, how not to do it again, how to avoid that situation again. But then this is the part I struggle with. Sometimes I don't do it so gently. But I need to do it gently. I need to show them that I care, but yet you mean business. That's Jesus to us. He does all of those things. And the most important thing, Jesus never forgot Peter, and he will never forget us. No matter what our sins are, no matter how long we've been away from God, no matter what we have done, Jesus is there for us. He never forgets us, and he's ready for us to be the Christian that we need to be. So as we wrap up this whole book, as we end this last devotional on this book, are we living the Christian life that we need to be? Are we a Peter? Do we need to change? I saw myself, I don't know about you all, but I saw myself a lot in this devotional. I was a Peter in a lot of circumstances. So I know I've got to work on it, and I venture to say I'm not the only one that needs to work on it. So as always, as wrapped up the book, I will be completely honest. It's been a crazy, crazy weekend, and I have not thought about next week. I do not know what direction I'm going to go, but I will get it done. So it will be a surprise, probably to you and me both, what we're going to talk about next week. So I hope everyone has a great week, and I will see you all here next week.